Is time travel real? And if so, has someone from the future already been here? The Physics of Time Travel with Dr. Robert Nemiroff. I remember when I read about this particular story online thinking to myself, what a cool idea. I mean, even if it's a long shot, what a creative way to approach a scientific question. The story was that scientists were searching through social media and the internet to look for evidence of time travelers, to see if they had been here and left any breadcrumbs, so to speak, behind on social media. The man who headed that project is Dr. Robert Nemiroff, currently teaching physics at Michigan Tech, previously worked with NASA's Goddard Flight Space Center, and who's done some other pretty cool stuff in science that you might have seen, even if you don't know who was behind them. Welcome to the program for the first time, Dr. Nemiroff.
Hey, George. Thanks for inviting me on.
I know this can be daunting for scientists because, we cover some pretty crazy stuff in here, but I really appreciate you coming on, and I promise you're in good hands.
Okay. Yeah. Ready for anything here.
When I saw the story about your project, I had the thought to myself two things. One was, that's pretty audacious and creative. What a cool idea. And the second thought was, man, that guy's going to take a beating from his colleagues. Was the second part true?
I think things have been mixed with that. My colleagues on the faculty at Michigan Tech, at least my friends, thought it was interesting and cool, and they kind of know I'm somewhat eccentric, let's say. About others, I think it's kind of mixed. Some people think it's pretty cool. Some people think it's kind of crazy and probably shouldn't have been published.
Do you going into it? Did you expect to come up with some results?
Oh, I wasn't really thinking we would find time travelers, but it's really fun to think about. So I have a research group, students who have primary projects, and so we meet once a week, and over the summer we meet a couple times. Once we meet at my house for poker, and we just have fun, and we shoot the breeze. We don't play for money, we just play for pride, because no one wants to lose, right? And so we talk about fun topics, and time travel has come up several times. And so I've thought about this in the past, so I challenged the students to try to come up with a scientific way of finding time travelers if they were here among us. I mean, it's prevalent in science fiction. It's everywhere in science fiction. But let's try to come up with a scientific procedure to find them if they're here. I wasn't really thinking they were here, but I wasn't aware of any scientific process that tried to go through trying to find them.
How many students are we talking about?
Oh, let's see. Look at my table. We have 6 around my table. So
these are advanced kind of.
One student took the lead. Teresa Wilson was my co-author on the paper.
What was the process then? What did they do?
Well, we came up with a bunch of things, but if someone came up to you and had told you they were from the future, you'd say, well, why would you think that? They wouldn't be able to prove it to you very easily. So how would it be that if someone came up to you that they could prove to you they were from the future? Let's see, they might give you winning lottery numbers. Okay, that'd be great, but that doesn't seem to happen. No one admits to that anyway. But let's say we wanted to search a vast database. So the topic came up that the internet is not only a way of communicating, it's actually a vast database. Google has a lot of information. Facebook has a lot of information on it. Maybe there'd be some way of finding them there. And this was sort of a whimsical project. This wasn't our main project, but the students, several undergraduate students at Michigan Tech, several graduate students, and myself, we really enjoyed speaking about this. So we started coming up with maybe some terms. Well, first we came up with the idea, this actually I had a while ago before. One way of finding it is if someone came up to you and let's say your neighbor came up to you 5 years ago and kept talking about Pope Francis. And you're thinking, I don't know a Pope Francis. And so they mention it several times. Then you start to think, wow. And then in 2013, when there actually is a Pope Francis, you think, wow, how did they know that? So the idea is what we call prescient information. Does anyone ever show information that they should not have had at the time? Now, this happens a lot in science fiction. People from the future come back and they mention something they shouldn't, and then everybody has a good laugh and it's somehow relevant to the plot. But has that ever happened in reality? So we couldn't really remember a case, but we didn't actually go through scientifically looking for it. So we went scientifically looking for two terms. One was Pope Francis, and one was Comet Ison. Because before a couple years ago, those terms were just completely absent from the public lexicon. Nobody would have any reason to mention them. And so we figured if we could find somebody consistently mentioning them, maybe one, then we would just keep looking and seeing if, what's this about? How do they know to speak about that? So we went and started searching on, we could ask our friends, did you ever hear? And they'd say no, but that's a very small audience. The internet is vast. So we started searching on the internet and social media.
And man, that is a gigantic project, though. That's so much to digest and comb through. I can't imagine how much stuff you had to look at.
Yeah, well, the databases are vast, but the search engines are good. So you can search on Google, and the search comes back almost right after you hit enter.
Oh.
So we searched on Google. And Google has other things called Google Trends. And the students actually, I'm 53, so I'm somewhat in touch with modern social media, but not as much as many of them are. So they were really leading me. So have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you looked here? So I have a Facebook page, that's just for family and friends, but I didn't really know much about Facebook and if you could search on Facebook and stuff like that. But they knew pretty much. And I even think everyone learned by going through this and trying the different search engines. So you don't think of Facebook as a search engine, but it's got a little magnifying glass up there at the top, and you can actually search through it. It turns out that Facebook is not a really great way to find things. So we discovered this just by typing stuff in there and seeing what happened. Where we didn't call the Facebook company, and we didn't ask them to give us a huge database of their data. We just went there and searched for what was there. And Facebook first has several problems with it. It's a wonderful social device, but it has problems in searching for old terms. And one is that it doesn't list all the old terms. They cut you off after a page or two. And another thing is that Facebook allows you to backdate posts back to when you formulated the account. So if someone opened a Facebook account in 2010, then they could, after Pope Francis took his name, they could have gone back to 2011 and put in posts supposedly claiming to have, that they know about Pope Francis. But that wouldn't have been really convincing in the sense, wouldn't have been determinative, because they could have gone back and post-dated that. So we searched in Google, we searched in Bing. So one of the problems with Google was that it's a great search engine, but they put many places through Google Ad Trends and things like that, put new ads next to old articles. So when we search for Pope Francis, we say, oh, wow, look at all this. But no, it's actually, if you look at the article, it's nothing about Pope Francis or Comet Ison or one of the other search terms we tried out. It's in the ad. And so it turns out that Google wasn't really the best either. And it was too many false positives. So our scientific way of looking for prescient information that people shouldn't know, wasn't really getting anywhere with Google. So another search engine was Twitter. And it was just like the next on the list, getting a little bit discouraged at this point. But Twitter turned out to be great. Twitter, you cannot backdate posts. Twitter is only 140 characters per tweet, and you can search the whole database pretty quickly. There is other programs you can use to search through the Twitter database, and you can pretty much go through the whole thing, and you don't have to have any special privileges. So Twitter turned out to be one of our strongest ways of looking for stuff. So we searched through for anyone tweeting about, Comet Ison or Pope Francis on Twitter, and found nothing. Well, actually, we did find one little tweet that mentioned a possible Pope Francis, but it wasn't. We looked at it closely, and it did not appear to be to us information that people shouldn't know about. Somebody was openly speculating. It pointed to a post on the web that someone was openly speculating what might be in the coming time when there's a new pope, where he might be from, what name he might take. It wasn't clearly someone who was from the future trying to, broadcast that or saying things they shouldn't really know.
So they didn't pick the actual guy. They were just speculating about the name.
Yes, that's right. They're speculating about the name. Yes. So we had a hoot, and so that was. We also looked at the search engine. So one of the sites that I'm involved with and helped found is something called the Astronomy Picture of the Day. So here's a plug: apod.nasa.gov.
Yeah, that's great.
And,
that's great stuff. Yeah.
So APOD's got a search engine. So this is something that we can look through. I can have access to the log files for. So we're typing stuff in there, trying to see if anyone's talking about, Pope. Comet ISON. Actually, we weren't hopeful to find Pope Francis in the astronomy search engine database there, but we couldn't find anything about, from 2000 and we had a search window of a couple of years when we thought there might be a reliable, but nobody was typing in even a search for Comet ISON, for several years previously. Nothing. So, we're not proving there's no time travelers among us. We're not proving there's no time travel, but there's possibilities that this could have happened, that somebody could have typed something into a search engine or mentioned something on the web or tweeted something, and we got nothing.
Well, I did see a headline that says scientists disprove time travel with social media, at least one of those articles. We'll talk about that and about the larger question of how you as a physicist look at the topic of time travel, whether it's even remotely possible or just an exercise for stretching your brain. The Who, Eminence Front, take us into the break. Bunch more to come here on Coast to Coast AM. We're talking with Dr. Robert Nemiroff, astrophysicist, about time travel and this creative experiment that he and his students undertook to look for evidence, little breadcrumbs that time travelers may have left on social media. When we come back, we'll expand this discussion a little bit about the physics of time travel and then try to get to one or two of your questions as well. Stay with us. Much more to come here on Coast to Coast AM. My guest, Dr. Robert Nemiroff, mentioned a couple of minutes ago that using Facebook to try to search for evidence of time travelers was proved difficult. Maybe Facebook was too busy handing over files to the NSA or something to be cooperative with an academic project like this. The assumption, Dr. Nemiroff, a lot of your critics who wrote about this said was you made a wrong assumption in that the Facebook would still be around in the future, or that people in the future would still use Twitter, which is, of course, is not what you were saying at all.
Right. So all they would have had is, if they came back to this time, is to know about Facebook or know about Twitter, or have someone who they said something. So if your neighbor is going outside and talking about Pope Francis all the time, and you have a Twitter account, then it's a third-party thing, which I would guess would be more likely. So if your neighbor is coming out and saying that you're Twittering, has anyone ever heard of Pope Francis? What's going on here? So they don't have to go on the social media. They just have to put the information out there, and we're so connected that maybe it would filter through to something that we could find.
I just meant they don't have to have Facebook and Twitter in 200 years. They could presumably leave the clue while they're back here, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so certainly Facebook or Twitter has a lifetime, but it might just be left as a database in the future. But if they had heard about it, maybe I'm not catching your question, but if they've heard about it, they could come back and say, oh, that's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll search through something like that and find something, some knowledge. One reason people give for time traveling to the past would be historical, trying to find out what would happen in the past, because not all of history transfers to the future. Even now, historians debate what's happened at any number of important events.
Well, I saw a whole bunch of different kinds of stories written about it, some of which were just embarrassing for my profession. The guys that wrote, I mentioned about the headline, scientists prove time travel is not possible because you didn't find any instances, right?
Right. So we didn't prove anything. We just did a search for it. People search for any number of things. They searched for dark matter in expensive experiments and then didn't find it. So one thing is people say we might be wasting government money, but this wasn't a government-funded project. So the quote I like to say is that the science fiction time travel industry might be a multi-billion-dollar industry, but we checked it for under $1. We checked a little bit of it for under $1. We typed things into search engines. We had a fun time, and we didn't find anything. We didn't search all. We only searched for a couple of search terms, who knows, if there were time travelers among us, they might have used something completely different. There might have been, we only searched a little bit, but even the little bit that we did, I think, is the greatest search that's yet been done in terms of the most encompassing. But still, it was only a small fraction of the information that's out there. This isn't definitive. It's just possibly interesting, and it's possibly a start if other people want to continue this.
I saw some just goofy stuff. I mean, if the time travelers decide to go on social media, wouldn't it be to poke an ex-girlfriend instead of talk about the Pope, somebody said. Or someone said, time travelers don't have time for social media. They're here to prevent the apocalypse. Wisecracks like that. Were you surprised by just the volume of response that you got?
Well, in my view, I was keeping track of it. More than half was somewhat positive. It wasn't all that negative. There was a lot of volume of response because we didn't publicize this. In fact, I had submitted this to 3 different physics journals, and it was rejected straight out without review. They didn't send it out to a referee. In science, when you submit something to a journal, they send it out to an independent referee who will advise the editor whether this is worth publishing. So none of the 3 physics journals, which I won't mention, it's all right, would send it out for review. And so what we did, it was accepted at a conference at the American Astronomical Society, although it's not really astronomy, because I've done lots of other astronomy projects there. And there's a preprint server called ARXIV, archive.org, that a lot of physics papers and a lot of astronomy papers and computer science and math papers can get uploaded to. And they can reject papers too, but they did accept our paper as a preprint, and that's what you're linking to on the front page of the coasttocoastam.com. So that is where our manuscript appears, and we did not publicize it. I just put it up there. It was accepted on the preprint server archive, and then I timed it because I wanted the paper behind the presentation I would give at the American Astronomical Society. And then while driving from Michigan, upper Michigan where I live, to the meeting in Washington, D.C., I started getting email, and then I started getting phone calls from people who had seen it. And then I said, can we put this off until the meeting? And then I was told by one of the reporters that this is already a viral bubble, and that it's not going to go away, and so I should just basically deal with it as best I could. And so what happened is we'd stop at rest stops, and I would see what new email and stuff I got, phone calls I got, and try to respond as best I could. So I kind of think of it as kind of like surfing this publicity wave. So it's kind of fun, kind of different, but I think most people. Most of the reports have been reasonably fair. There have been some that haven't been. But I think it's just a topic that's captured the public imagination. How many times do you get 3 things? Do you get time travel, religion with the Pope, and, all both in the same, and the internet and social media? Those 3 things all in the same story. I didn't realize it at the time. It doesn't happen too often. And they kind of intermix in interesting ways. So it was interesting. It was popular. I should have realized it might have been, I thought it might be a little bit popular, but I didn't realize it would have created the viral bubble that it did.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, you run a Google search for time travel social media and see how many articles there are written about it. Did you collect them all? Have you collected them and put them in a file? And maybe somebody could write a paper about that.
No, I haven't collected them. There's actually, it's too many, I think. Many of them are also just copies. It's hard to know when someone is taking something that's been written by AP or appeared on CNN and they purchase that content. So you probably know, but your listeners might not know that a lot of content is sometimes just mirrored. And so a lot of it is that. But some of it's not, so it's kind of interesting. But we have gotten a bunch of emails, some of them kind of strange emails. And so...
From time travelers?
A lot of it, some people claim to be time travelers and stuff. So you have to be careful with people like that because they have a lot emotionally invested in that. I don't necessarily believe just because they declared to me in an email that they are a time traveler, that they really are a time traveler. In fact, I'm quite skeptical. But you have to respond with a degree of empathy because they might really believe it. And so I'm working with somebody now to go through the 100 emails they received along those lines and try to answer in a scientific yet empathetic way.
Let's talk about time travel. I mean, it was fun for your students, I would think, to tackle something like this, and probably got them pretty jazzed about the general subject matter. But as a physicist, what's your take on time travel?
Well, time travel to the future is quite possible. It's if you can see it in Einstein's special theory of relativity, it's not controversial. So if you were to go on a spaceship, somehow it's a technology problem, a spaceship out near the speed of light and then return, you would return to the future. You could return to the distant future, as happened in Planet of the Apes. And my favorite version is with Charlton Heston, because I'm older. And he came back and saw a broken Statue of Liberty, and that is scientifically feasible. You can travel out really fast in the speed of light, come back, and you're in the future. You can travel to the future. In fact, there have been experiments where they've taken physicists have taken clocks and put them on airplanes, and the airplanes aren't going near the speed of light, but then they're very accurate clocks. And then they've compared those clocks to the ones that they've kept home and seen that they are slightly different, which means that one clock traveled slightly to the future and they don't match up anymore. So that's not controversial. What's controversial and generally not thought to be possible is time travel to the past. Because if you do that, there's any number of problems, the most famous of which is called the grandfather paradox.
Sure.
There's other paradoxes as well. There's gross violations of energy and mass. And one of my favorite paradoxes is, if that happens, if you can go to the past, where do ideas come from? So in Back to the Future, Marty McFly gave the song lyrics to somebody. Who originated those song lyrics? There's no start to information. It's in some ways if you're allowed to go to the past. But it's not forbidden in general relativity. In general relativity, you can have what's called closed time-like loops, where you can come back to the same place before you left. It's a mathematically accepted solution, but physicists almost all physicists believe that there's some unknown law of physics or something that prohibits that from happening. And Stephen Hawking is one of those famous people who said there's a chronology protection conjecture that says that can't happen. But that's sort of like a conjecture. There's no known physical law, but most physicists, as I said, don't believe it. And I don't either. I don't think that time travel to the past is really possible.
You had said that when you submitted this paper that the three entities that got it just rejected it out of hand, and I'm not surprised by that. Just having the words time travel in the topic might be enough right there. But when you physicist guys have a beer on a Saturday night and you're sitting around playing poker, you talk about things like this. I mean, it's acceptable to kick it around. Is the same true at a conference, at a journal?
Well, I would say no. It's fun to talk about it over cards or a beer. But in terms of professional, you really have to have extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So it might be possible to get a theory paper saying here's another way of getting a closed time-like loop, so it's mathematically possible in general relativity through another way of going to the past. But people generally, physicists almost all think, well, there's really something missing there. This isn't really possible. So if someone could publish a reason as to why it's not possible, more specifically, a mathematical or physical proof based on, things that might be of interest and that might be accepted in journals. But looking for time travelers is a little bit too out there. So I wasn't all that surprised. I was kind of hopeful that a journal would take it, but I wasn't all that surprised when none of them did.
Let me ask you this:
Go ahead. I was approached, though, at the meeting by an editor of a journal who said that he'd love to have this in his journal, but he doesn't think the other editors will go along with it. So the last word hasn't been written, and I will approach that journal now through that editor and see if we can get it there. But it's not that important to me now because it's out there on the archive. It's so physicists and everybody can see it. And I think it's, in my opinion, my biased opinion, it's a pretty well-written paper. It's got the history of time travel there. They're mentioned that time travel to the future is not controversial. And so I think we make our case pretty well there. And so I think it might just sit there, and that will be it.
One other question: is there a breakthrough that could be foreseen by physicists? The kind of technological breakthrough that would make this possible, or the kind of conversion of energy? I would imagine any kind of time travel machine would take a lot of energy. Anything that anybody's working on, where this thing could actually, it's something that's doable at some point, or is it just
I'm not
theoretical?
aware of a physics research project that's actually looking to create time travel to the past. I think it's not considered to be something that people would want to try because it's just considered to be so not possible that nobody would want to dump money into it. Nobody would want to. It's fun to search for it. I mean, it was a cheap search, but to really try to create a machine, I'm unaware of anyone trying to do that. So
What
I
about
don't see
to the future?
In the near future because it's just not being investigated.
And then the flip side of it, no project to go to the future, though. I mean, there's nobody trying to build a machine in their garage or that you know of.
Well, every airplane, every time you walk around the block, every time you move, you're slightly moving into the future. As
Sure.
I like to say, you can only go to the future, but you can only see the past. So you go to the future because every time you move at all, it's like the twin paradox where you're slightly going away and coming back some fraction of the second, into the future of wherever it is you were. You can only see the past because when you look out and light comes to you, it doesn't come to you instantaneously. So when you see someone from across the room, it took light a fraction of a second to get to you. So you're not seeing them right as it was. You're seeing them as it was when the light left them. When you look in the mirror, you're not seeing yourself right then. You're seeing yourself at some fraction in the past. So I still believe that. You can only go to the future and you can only see the past.
Try to get one call in. Mike, east of the Rockies. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Hello. Very good, very good. George, how are you?
I'm okay. What's on your mind?
Okay, here is a story and a question for you. It's been partially proven that time travel is possible. There was a guy who was in a very famous rock and roll band called the Iron Butterfly years ago. They had a hit song, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. I think he was the bass player. He eventually left the world of sex, drugs, rock and roll, cut his hair, used his brains, and he came up with some type of equation that proved or partially proved that you can send a message faster than the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second. Now, are either one of you gentlemen familiar with this story at all?
I'm not.
I'm not familiar with it, and I'm automatically skeptical. So as I said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And if people come up to me and tell me they're time travelers, my first feeling is, I don't think so. But if you have some kind of great proof, then maybe I'll look at it. But I'm sorry to say I'm immediately skeptical, as I think many of the listeners of Coast to Coast are skeptical of some things like this as well.
We appreciate the call. Thanks very much. We got just about a minute or so to go. I had no idea that you were responsible for the astronomy picture of the day, but I see those things all the time. They're always very cool. How do you put that together, and how much of your time does it take?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we've been running that for 18 years now. It takes maybe 6 to 10 hours a week, and I do that with my collaborator, Jerry Bunnell, who's at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And we just we scour the internet for really cool astronomy images, and we try to create one small paragraph of explanation so people can, you don't have to read too far, but if you want to know more, you can follow our links. And so we have, over 5,000 images in there now. And so if you're interested in seeing an astronomy image and you're interested in seeing it explained, then you can go to apod.nasa.gov. And so, yeah, Jerry and I have had a hoot doing that for almost 2 decades now.
Back to your time travel experiment, sort of wrapping it up. Would you do it again? Would you handle it the same way? And did it work for your students? I mean, I think we sort of touched on it a little bit, but I can imagine that was so much fun that they get really jazzed about it.
Yes, it was very exciting to the students. It was a good way of teaching physics of time, that you can go to the future but not the past. Would I do it again? We don't have definite plans to do it. Actually, if someone was going to do a better job, it might be someone who has better access to Google databases where they don't have the ads, or Facebook where they don't cut it off. So maybe somebody internal to one of those vast databases of information might be able to do it better in the future than we did. But still, I would be surprised if they found something. But I'd want to read that paper.
It sounds like a book. Wouldn't it be a book?
Maybe. Actually, I was contacted by someone from Hollywood, but nothing's really happened on that yet. But it was interesting that this is opening some doors I'm not used to. And so I'm talking to people, interesting people like you, that I haven't talked to before. So it's been quite a ride. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you're about to go on another ride here because we got a pretty big reach out there. Dr. Robert Nemiroff, thanks very much for being here. It was a fun conversation, and I hope you keep us in mind if you do another paper like this. We'll put it on the air right away.
Okay, thank you. Really cool.
Thanks a lot.